This is Mark Livesey, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Someone tell me where the Humane Society of the United States has ever bought 1 acre of habitat, where they have ever funded one project that got rid of invasive weed species, where they've ever funded one project that got rid of the Asian carp in the Illinois River. I mean,
none of it.
Pick whatever it is. They've got net assets in the hundreds of millions, and they've never done anything.
I did this whole series of posts of the hierarchy of dead animals on Instagram, on social media. So I had like a picture of chicken. No one cares. Like dead, chicken meat. A picture of chicken. A picture of fish, like cut up fish. No one cares. A picture of an actual fish. Still, no one seems to give a picture of a dead turkey. No one seemed to care. It seemed like But then I showed bear meat. And I showed some bear meat that was just in a bag. What about that? And I'm like, now we're getting weird, right? Well, it's just meat, but it says bear on it. This is bear meat.
Yeah. We care about wildlife. We care about landscapes. We care about all the things that are necessary for conservation. We'll tax ourselves 11%.
But if I showed an actual bear, like we posted some pictures of he's taking me bear hunting, actual bears that I've killed. Gee, I've never had anything in my life where people get mad at me more.
This is the lightest one we make. It's 175 grain center pin.
In front of that camera there.
So the Broadhead's what started it all.
Yeah. I was just say it's stronger. Like a hatchet can take more abuse than a thin knife. It can take a lot more impact.
Because of the center pin, you're saying you're not breaking arrows.
I designed this for zero failure on impact with game animal.
I'd buy off on that just looking at it. I don't see how you could break it because this component here is kind of like comparing a Honda to a Lamborghini. But that carbon arrow is built to hit frontal impact. Well, when you go to the side, because the shaft wall is so thin, you can about fart and snap it in half.
And I've willed it down to that.
Okay.
This center pin system with the micro diameter.
The one ring that will control
the
middle Earth.
This is...
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We are at the Northwest Sportsman Show in Portland, Oregon. We have Brent Hahn here and Aron Snyder, and we are in a very crowded XXX Phelps Game Calls booth here at the show. So it's kind of cozy. It might look a little too friendly to people walking by, but on camera... Hopefully, with the wide angle, it looks like we're not that friendly.
It should make your arms look bigger.
On your end.
We don't need our heads to look bigger. They're already too big.
So, it's cool because we're going to talk about this Broadhead, what do you call it? Like arrow system?
It's a Broadhead delivery system.
Broadhead delivery system. Yep. Let me do this. Put that right here.
All right. How's that better?
Oh, that's better.
Night and day difference.
I'm right inside your head now.
So, Broadhead delivery system.
Yep. Well, we started with the Broadhead.
Okay. So, let's just get into this, okay? I've had a lot of people asking about it. And how do you say the name of Valkyrie?
Valkyrie.
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 Yep.
And so it's Valkyrie.
Valkyrie Archery.
Valkyrie Archery.
ValkyrieArchery.com.
So we're here with Brent Hahn from Valkyrie Archery.
Look at those balancing skills. So your system is a delivery system with a lot of FOC, super weight
We
forward.
make moderate weight, extreme weight forward Broadhead delivery systems. And it came about, I designed a Broadhead that wasn't available on the market. I wanted to shoot a three-blade Broadhead that had the penetration characteristics of a two-blade. I was a big fan of the two-blade, the single bevel, 3-to-1 ratio. Mm-hmm. And I actually have one designed that's on the blocks right now. But my friend came up, showed me this old Broadhead. It was called the Martin Penetrator. Mm-hmm. And they had modified it in the old days and said, he told me this Broadhead, they've killed hundreds of elk, him and his buddies, and have never had a failure with it. And I need to look at it. Mm-hmm. And I took a look at it. He told me about his bone breaking and how they shattered bones and femurs using wood arrows and longbows, light longbows. And so I thought I'd take a look at it and try it. And so I pretty much took that design and put it on steroids. So I built, I had some criteria involved in it because I used to glue in all kinds of parts and use glue on and screw in weights and everything in my arrows. And
how long is it?
We gotta
got a sample.
Can we get a visual here?
But this is the lightest one we make. It's
Put
175 grain center
That up
pin.
in front of that camera there.
So the broadhead's what started it all.
Okay.
And here's the regular. That's the same broadhead in a 175 and a standard converter point.
So what's this one?
Same grain weight.
Okay.
There's just one's for the center pin system for the micro diameter shaft, and then the other one's just standard screw in for regular.
Which we haven't got
arrow.
into yet.
No, but it all started with the broadhead.
Yeah.
I built the broadhead, but I couldn't test it. They may or may not be sharp. I don't know if I brought sharp ones. Usually I don't bring them to the shows.
The one I touched
probably a
yesterday
good
was
idea.
ridiculously sharp.
They come sharp. Another pet peeve of mine. I want sharp broadheads sharp when they come. I just want to take them out of the box,
sharp.
screw it on. But when I built the broadhead, I couldn't really test the limits of the broadhead.
Why?
Using the arrow components that I had bought. I bought everything retail. I wasn't in the industry.
Okay.
I just read about stuff and buy it, or you read the magazines and try everything. And
so you built this broadhead, and you're putting it on arrows that you're buying as they come available with the parts that
with all the components that are available in the industry.
And what's the problem?
I can't test the broadhead because the arrow's shattering or bending or breaking before I can test the limits of the broadhead. So,
and is this because you're using a micro diameter arrow?
No. I was using at this point. I'm using 5/16 arrows. I was actually using gold tips because they're they got the name for being so strong.
So they were breaking at the tip where the broadhead screws.
The broadhead wasn't breaking, but the components, the little
arrow was breaking,
short,
or the
components.
insert.
So I started putting sleeves on there, and they were shattering on frontal impacts because I was shooting steel plates, and I was shooting frontals. And oblique, I set steel plate at a 45 and shoot that. So, but I was getting too much failure on the arrows, so I started.
Well, you're shooting a steel plate.
With moderate weight bows, so I could test relative strength.
But so then you footed the shaft, basically.
So then I built on the 5/16 shafts. They're starting to make them now a little bit longer, out of good aluminum 70-75. I built like 2.5 inch inserts, and about 1 inch sleeves that would go over the end, so I could keep the front end together and test the arrow. And that worked pretty good.
Trad guys had been doing before this was taking like a 2019, 2012, whatever the size of the aluminum shaft, cutting them down into 1 to 2 inch pieces, whatever they wanted, and then gluing those on for the increased durability because of what you were running into.
That's exact. I did the same thing.
Yep.
I also was testing arrow shafts, and I was doing it all on my own dime. With my own time. I had a job at the time that allowed me I had the money and I had the time.
Okay.
And this was kind of I guess you'd say it's an obsession of mine. So I think someone else has a similar problem. But and I spent a ton of money because I was just tired of wasting money and time trying to test all this stuff out. I'm like, I just want I got the broadhead, needed to test it. I built and I'm at 5/16 shafts right now.
Yep.
I built these longer inserts, these sleeves that weren't just the little tiny collars that would always come on. I mean, if you hit something, there wasn't enough gluing surface there to hold them on. And so I built longer ones, deeper ones out of better material.
Yep.
And then started looking for ways to improve. Then I could test the broadhead. I figured out, the broadheads, I used the super good steel, tempered to maximum hardness, super sharp. Pretty much, and I wanted a one-piece broadhead that's pretty much there's no chance of failure.
Okay.
So, there's no blades coming off. There's none of that stuff. So,
okay, so someone comes to you and they have the standard compound or traditional setup. When I say standard gotcha. To the younger crowd, they've got a 400 spine carbon arrow, 30 inches long. They've got an aluminum insert that weighs 13 grains. And they have a 175 grain head up front. And their arrow weighs 485, 90 grains.
Yeah.
So they've got two options. They can cut a bunch of aluminum arrows down over and over and over, and then get the epoxy, 2-part epoxy, glue it on the end of the arrow, change out the insert, put a brass insert up front, or they can go to you. What do you offer them that's better and easier? What does this system do?
What I've done is taken everything that you're doing and a lot of guys are doing right now with the cutting the little pieces of aluminum, using, changing out your inserts for brass. I've simplified that down. You don't need to do that anymore.
So your system it's already got the insert and it's already got the footing already.
Everything. The center pin system is the whole key to it.
This is patented.
It's patented. Yeah, we just got the patent on it. It screws in. There's only 2 or 3 parts total to the whole thing.
Okay.
The shafts are going to come with the outserts or sleeves, we call them center pin sleeves, already on the shaft. You just cut the back.
Okay.
So all you do, you have to fletch your arrow. If you buy the shafts, you got to fletch, cut them length, fletch your arrow.
And you're holding the Black Eagle.
That's an X Impact.
Black Eagle X Impact.
We also have our Valkyrie rain arrows, but I mean, it's
so
the same arrow.
This system, somebody's not putting this on at home. They're buying the shaft and your system up front all in one. The shafts come with sleeves. Or can they buy the sleeves and do it themselves?
You can, but we're kind of messing with that right now because if the guys don't install them properly, you're going to get glue in the threads. It might come off. Then they're going to, this stuff's not cheap. It's expensive. And if you guys start losing points and targets, it's going to be an issue.
Right. Okay. So now, what if you as far as arrows? What are you offering? What are you offering?
We don't. Right now, we're just offering components and shafts.
Okay.
We don't really make arrows at this time. We're going to be doing that.
Okay.
But right now, we just have the components.
So I mean, when you say components and shafts, can somebody buy arrows from you pre-built?
We do pre-build arrows.
Okay.
They're spendy.
Yeah. So what's a dozen arrows cost?
Dozen arrows is $300.
But that's
4 fletch. There's all kinds of things that go into it. I mean, both front end, back end squared. We have special nocks we put on there. I mean, these are that's the Easton G knock.
Yep.
But we're going to a different kind of knock. 4 fletch feathers. Everything's spined. Everything's weighed.
Gotcha.
And everything's pure and true. When we install, another thing we do when we install the sleeves, every single one's spin tested. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of guys don't know is on those outserts, even on the store-bought ones, sometimes those outserts are not square.
Oh, yeah.
And so we actually test those, and if they're out of square, we square them up.
Yeah.
And even on ours, even though ours are about as high end as you can get, I was just doing some this morning that were slightly out, and
so they're getting basically a perfect shaft, or as close to perfect as someone could get.
Close to perfect. That's kind of why we run the Black Eagles too. They seem to have a little better quality control than some other companies.
So what kind of FOC are you getting with this setup?
Okay, our setup extreme weight forward. For us, it's not, but about 19-20% is where we start. And we go up from there. The sky's the limit pretty much. It's hard. Once you get around 30%, though, it's really hard to get over that. You almost have to detune. I'm talking for a trad guy, you almost got to detune your bow a little bit. I mean, there's things we can do.
It is impossible
to get
for a compound guy.
Compound guy, we don't have the technology yet. But we're gonna. But we're working on stuff right now.
Now, why would somebody want 30% FOC on a compound?
Well, I'll tell you, accuracy and penetration. The accuracy, I've noticed, once you get to about 20%, you start noticing a difference in accuracy.
Close range or long range?
Both.
What do you mean by 20%, 30%?
Weight forward. So FOC is the forward of center balance point from the middle of the arrow, and we measure it from the throat of the nock to the back of the head, or which would be the end of the outsert.
Got it.
The midpoint there would be the midpoint. There's different ways. This is how we do it. It's the simplest. Throat of the nock to back of the head. You measure to the midpoint of that. Okay. Wherever the balance point is in front of that, you take, and that's a fraction. That over the full length of the arrow gives you your percentage of weight forward.
Got it.
So when I asked close range or long range, I didn't, obviously, if close range is or long range is accurate, close is probably going to be too. When I'm saying, what would you consider long range? What have you guys tested these out to?
Well, mostly about 80.
Okay, gotcha. And
we've shot them at 100 too, but it's hard to get a guy that's accurate at 100.
But your groups are tighter with this setup than they are with your other type of setup.
Instantaneous. It's 100% every time. I try to make a guy, especially with guys shooting a little bit heavier weight arrows now out of their compounds.
Yeah.
They're shooting like a 450 or 500 grain arrow. Mm-hmm. I'm like, it's perfect.
Yep.
They come over. I give them the same weight arrow, except we took all the weight that they've got kind of spent
distributed throughout the arrow.
I run it up to the front. They go there and instantaneous. It goes from like a basketball to a softball, 40 or something. It's almost it's like in half every time. Period. I mean, it's
I
amazing.
imagine, Aaron, some of that has to do with the fact that people don't tune their bows all that well, and so this is just more forgiving.
Part of it, I mean, I would have to say, in my opinion, the tolerance you are sending out is as important as the weight forward. If someone is already shooting a decently weight forward arrow, meaning if they're already shooting 13 to 15%, which is pretty high for this day and age. But if you go to 20, I think if there was an increase from 13 to 15 to 20 to 25, a lot of it is, or as much is going to be the quality and tolerance of the arrow you're sending out as it is. It's going to be a 50-50 increase. The weight forward's helping, but also that you've built a shaft that's
straight.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I've actually tested them with wobbly broadheads.
Mm-hmm.
Man, dude, it doesn't. Well, but you know, with the FOC up above 20,
yeah,
I'll shoot a broadheads wobbling. I shoot them anyway, and dude, they're right in there. I mean, you know, if I did that with like a 12 to 15% arrow, the things are just flying all over the place.
Well, is that because the bow's slow? Because the bow's going to have to be. Is it the same weight arrow or?
Same weight arrow. I think it's the balance point and the way the head pulls the shaft.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing on penetration on animals. It's the same thing in the wind. The wind is a huge. It's one of the benefits that I've found has been pretty nuts on the extreme weight forward is that
heavy winds.
We don't aim off at anything. The tail flies all around wildly, even on a thermal, you know, any kind of wind because we keep the back end so light. But the point of impact
still solid.
It's either there or slightly tacks into the wind. It's crazy. You know, most guys that shoot with the wind on their point of impact moving with the wind, their bow's blowing. So I tested that. I got inside my house. I was shooting out with a strong crosswind, about 15 to 20, so that my bow wouldn't blow. And my point of impact was right on. Tail flies, point of impact still there.
I know Casey Harbertson and Matt Davis have tested these and played around with them, and they were surprised.
Yeah. Well, the whole time I've been designing this, I started out like everybody. Like a lot of guys now are just kind of nibbling. Aaron's pretty far along. But a lot of guys are nibbling at it, not really talking about it, putting little pieces in there trying to increase their FOC a little bit. And the industry's doing that a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's where I started a number of years ago. And it seemed like, you know, from the shaft getting better and smaller and lighter. I mean, the reason I use the X Impacts is twofold. One is their quality control is really good. And two, their stiffness to weight ratio is about as good as you can get and still not have a brittle shaft. I tried the 5/16 shafts.
Let me explain that a little bit better, just so people understand, because I've tried to explain it too, and people, for you to shoot a system with that much weight forward, you're going to have to shoot
stiff shaft.
Fairly stiff, but you also don't want it too heavy. If most of the time you get a super stiff shaft,
it increases the weight of the arrow.
Super heavy arrow.
Correct.
So you need a stiff arrow that's not that
still
heavy.
Light.
Yeah, because you're going to end up shooting a 700 grain arrow out of a compound, which most people don't want to do.
No, that's right. And I don't want to.
Yeah, so you're going to want an arrow where normally you're going to be at 12 grains per inch, 13 grains per inch. If you get a super stiff shaft to be able to compensate for 200 plus grains up front, you're going to want to get that probably closer to 8.5 to 9, and then put 250 up front, then that puts you to a 500 grain arrow.
That's pretty much, that's the reason why. And, you know, the industry's using everybody's wanting to do a little heavier arrow, but in my opinion, everybody's it's better to have a heavier arrow for,
momentum.
Lethality and momentum and stuff for penetration. But that's better. But what's better than that is adding the weight and putting it properly in the arrow and moving it up front. And
well, I can tell you why I don't shoot heavier up front is it's impossible. I mean, not impossible. It is impossible to what is offered on the market today. You cannot get heavier than what I'm shooting right now until you start rednecking the crap out of it. Like, you can't do it with ultimate precision. You can't get heavier than 50 to 75 grain inserts, let's say, on a standard shaft, unless you're gluing parts to the back.
Yeah.
And if you're like me and you shoot at everything and you break arrows, you're gluing a lot of parts into the back of a shaft. The next thing that it's almost possible if you're doing the footing, most people don't have time to cut down a 2018 or whatever shaft it is to glue onto the end.
Yeah.
Because then you've got a brass insert then you've got an aluminum arrow gluing it to the end, and then you have to do that multiple times.
Yep, Aaron, everything you just said is I did that. And
Yeah.
I got sick. I mean, it's if you shoot a lot like you do, I shoot almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to spend a half an hour making a custom insert, gluing 2 inserts together to get some depth and more
Yep.
weight up front, and then cutting the sleeve and then gluing it on. Then you got to wait for because you can't use just plain old fast set epoxy on the sleeve because it'll come loose. You got to use the long set stuff.
Yep.
So then now you wait until tomorrow. I mean, it's just a big pain.
Yes, it is.
And I got so sick and tired of that. And I thought I can remember the moment where I was in my garage. I just got done screwing 2 gold tip. I had ground off the collar on one insert. I got a little piece of all thread, screwed the other one on there, and got all that just perfect, glued it in there, got on there. It took me like a half an hour. I'm like, there we go. And I can remember sitting there just going, there's one, only 11 more to go.
Right.
And I'm like, I just got to make this stuff. This is ridiculous. I spent half my life making this stuff in my garage.
So when you described this to me the other day, you were saying that because of this, what do you call that insert?
The center pin?
The center pin?
The Viking center pin, yeah.
Because of the center pin, you're saying you're not breaking arrows.
I designed this for 0 failure on impact with game animal. You could still, you won't break the front.
I'd buy off on that just looking at it. I don't see how you could break it because this component here compared to, without us getting in trouble, the collar on a gold tip is kind of like comparing a Honda to a Lamborghini. Your material is tougher. It is more precise. And the center pin portion of it obviously is more accurate the way that works compared to a standard
it runs
shaft.
right down the center.
And then the cut of the, the way that this is glued on, it's almost impossible for it to get glued on crooked. Like this,
it could be off a little bit. I mean, sometimes like if you do install the sleeves yourself, if you have a spin, you have to have a spinner to install them, but you might have to rotate them a couple times.
Well, when I say crooked, you are an overly anal retentive guy. Crooked to today's standards. If you went to an archery shop and spun most guys' shafts,
they're going to be messed
they're
up.
horrible, right? So with this is a high degree of precision.
Yeah.
And so they don't break.
The front end doesn't break.
Okay.
Like if you hit a rock or something, the shaft's going to end up. Most of the shafts we break up in the middle somewhere.
Flex.
Because the way that center pin works, it had that long pin that goes down behind the sleeve, which comes over about an inch. So it all works together to make the front end of that arrow is a freaking tank.
Okay, so let's say a guy shoots this and he busts the arrow in half.
Yeah.
What's he do?
You're done. Here's the one. Well, at first we were going to use heat removable glue up front. And
to remove the collar.
To take the collars off because they're expensive.
Yep.
I mean, they're quality material and machining and everything. So we did that, but then guys started, banging them off target houses, hitting the rocks and stuff, and then pretty soon, then they pull one out in a target.
So could a guy, because it sounds like they're done, could a guy set up, let's say he does 200 grains with you, tax, title, and license. Could a guy do a 75 grain brass insert, standard components, practice with those, and when it comes to hunting season, use your 12 arrow, you order a dozen arrows from you for the ultimate system?
Yeah. You could, and that's what I just was talking to a guy. I told him I was going to give him some standard field points, some 200 grainers, some 250s to run with his just standard outserts. He's already running X impacts.
Yeah.
And I said, so you can kind of get where you need to be.
Well, I just don't want people listening to shit their pants because most will when they're like, I'm done after spending that much.
Yep.
They could practice and prep maybe with one of these in their quiver and the rest of their arrows standard, and then just pull out the heavy hitters for season with this because it is so. Because I've snapped off the front on some outsert type shafts from gold tip hitting an animal. It's a weak spot, so when that arrow oscillates, it just snaps the front insert off.
That happens with guys. I hear that story all the time. It's happened to me.
Yeah.
And, but that's why the center pin. I mean, it's got you got to have it. And
How often does the center pin get ruined?
That's never going to get ruined.
So the broadhead and the center pin.
Well, this is this one here. Our target tips are 416 stainless, heat treated to maximum hardness. It's rifle barrel.
Okay.
So I made those that will outlast you. When you buy target tips, you can only lose them.
Yeah. Okay. So what about your broadhead?
Broadhead is all carbon steel, heat treated to maximum hardness, with I have broken a center pin, but I kicked it when I couldn't pull it out of the tree.
But for the most part, this just doesn't. You can reuse it over and over and over again.
Reuse it over and over again.
And you said you had a sharpening wheel.
I do. Another pet peeve of mine. Well, I'm terrible at is sharpening. 2 blades. So I was using the single bevel 2 blades, and even if you have the wheels, you still got to hold that
just right
to get that good edge. And mine would be wobbling all over. They still be sharp, but I mean, I made. Well, this is them right here. I made these sharpening wheels that you
specifically for.
Well, they're for any 3-blade broadhead.
Okay.
But for mine, they had to be smaller to get in the concave part.
Okay.
So you take these. You just need a 6-inch bench grinder.
Yep.
Put these wheels on there. You can either have a 1/2 inch or 5/8 arbor.
Yep.
And then as you have the.
You got a broadhead?
Yeah, you have the rotation away from you.
That's
so
important.
the broadhead, it goes away from you. You just pull the broadhead back across it as it's rotating away.
And you're getting a perfect blade.
I've got to mention, though, before you do that, you just crack the head loose on the shaft, on an arrow shaft, so it's free floating.
Yep.
And make sure you just lay it down flat. And then I usually run it there, and you want to spend a little bit more time in the concave part because there's more surface area. Just takes a little bit more time there.
Yep.
And you just run it out. Then you rotate. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other.
So you can run these broadheads
Moderate
on targets, do all this kind of stuff every day, shoot them, and then you can just run them back over that, and you have a razor sharp broadhead.
When I'm hunting around my house, or if you're hunting out of a lodge, if you have one of these there, I shoot my number 1 before I go hunting every time. I shoot it, and you can shoot clean foam with these broadheads. They're not going to get dull. So you shoot clean foam like 10 times, you can still shave hair with it.
How much are those?
The regular screw ends are $70 a 3-pack.
And then how much is a dozen of your full system with practice points?
You want broadheads too? Usually it costs a guy about $500 to get a half dozen or dozen shafts, half dozen field tips. You don't need more than 6. They're not going to bend or break.
Right.
Yeah, your arrows will break before you wreck the field tips, and then half dozen broadheads. It'll run you about it's about $500.
If you're Aron, he likes to just always shoot broadheads.
I shoot the same stuff, same broadheads all the time. And
they don't lose an edge.
They don't lose an edge. And one thing I will mention on the guys that are going to be finicky, if they order the broadheads, I make all the broadheads about 7 to 10 grains heavier. So if they say 300, so that they can stay within that. If you get a 300 grain broadhead, they can stay within that 300 grain window for a lot longer period of time.
Yeah.
So
no, that's smart.
So what's this bushing about?
Yeah, this is the center pin bushing. So we have the bushing on the back of the pin. When it slides in, does 2 things. One,
for people listening, it's like a 2-inch extension.
It's like there's a pin that goes down inside the shaft.
That's forged to it's part of the broadhead.
It's all one piece, yeah. And then on the end of the shaft, it's up inside, on the end of your pin that goes inside the shaft.
Is that a rubber bushing?
There's a rubber bushing in there, and that's in there for 2 reasons. One is it keeps the heads, kind of locks them in from, heads rattle loose all the time.
Yeah.
And you'll know
it drives me nuts.
And the tolerances are so lax. When you screw these in, you instantly know that you have a quality product. Because the other heads, when you screw them in, a lot of them are rattling around. When you screw that in, it's all snug and tight. Those O-rings keep it from rattling loose.
Matching.
And when you get an oblique impact, which is hitting at an angle, like if you glance off that hard plastic tubing in a Reinhardt target, that rubber inside that shaft acts as a rubber bumper, so you don't just have metal in there trying to snap your shaft in half when it gets knocked sideways inside a target.
Okay.
So, or an animal, like if you glance off a bone or something, it transfers the energy away.
Brent, why the micro diameter shaft?
Long story short, if the shaft diameter was larger than your broadhead ferrule, you lost penetration. If it was the same or smaller, it didn't. You got a little more.
Makes sense. There's some drag and some stuff.
There's no stuff. But and the smaller diameter was about the same as the same diameter shaft as your broadhead ferrule. But he didn't take into account moving animals, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, most animals you hit are moving when your arrow's going through them. So,
are you picking like the ass out of a pepper with some of that, or do you think it truly makes much of a difference, a noticeable difference?
I think it's a noticeable difference. In fact, it could be one of 2 things. With the weight forward setup, the shaft drag does, and plus for wind drift and things like that, I just think it's incomparable. The first time I shot a micro diameter, I just started running the super skinny. I call them super skinny, so micro diameter shafts just to try them out. And the first time, and I wanted the same weight arrow, so I had to put a little weight up front using the innie-outie thing up here. Shot it, and I'm like, oh, my God. What was that? I shot it again. I'm like, holy cow, these things shoot so pure. And then I started adding more weight to them, and then I started bare shafting them, and then throwing on more weight bare shaft, and they kept flying. I mean, the pureness was just unbelievable. I'm like, this is unbelievable. I mean, that's why they made it. I'm like, this is amazing. But the problem was, so I knew this was the platform.
Yep.
The front end was a problem. And, I spent so much money. Yeah, I was like, I can't remember. The things I was using were like $3 a piece, and they bend. If you miss the target one time, they're toast.
So I'm curious, like, these are tiny vanes, Snyder.
Yeah.
Like, how quiet is this arrow compared to others?
Like standard blazers, these are like mini blazers. What I found so far is if you get over a half inch back here, noise starts coming.
Okay.
You go under a half, noise starts going. That's just what I found. So these are under, but we use smaller. One of the biggest mistakes I made in the beginning with running the extreme weight forward was keeping the same fletching I was running before. Because when you're running that lower FOC arrow, you kind of have a little more unstable arrow. You need more control in the back to keep that thing going straight. The more weight you put up front, that head is pulling that shaft. You don't need as much control in the back.
Okay.
So
makes sense. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
And this gives you all.
What's this deal here?
Dude, that thing right there, I'll tell you.
You told me the name of it the other day.
The turbulator. That
the turbulator.
Ed Ashby did a seminar I didn't go, but I saw it on video at the Pope and Young convention, like, I don't know, 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Yep.
And I watched this turbulator thing. He did the whole thing on weight forward too. You guys should watch it. It's amazing. He was shooting straws.
He did a seminar here yesterday, I think.
Did he?
Yeah.
But he was shooting straws, and he did this straw thing with the extreme weight forward, and it was amazing. And then he did the turbulator, because at that time I was testing fletching.
Turbulator, for people listening, is just a little ring.
It's like a little 1/8 inch band that sticks up off the shaft. It's actually vinyl tape.
Right in front of the vanes.
Quarter inch in front of the vanes. It doesn't have to stick up very far, maybe a 16th
Okay,
of an
and
inch.
what's the whole point of it?
It disturbs the air. It disturbs the smooth air running along the shaft, so that when the air gets to the fletching, it's disturbed. It's more kind of like the dimples on a golf ball.
Has that been proven?
They put turbulator tape on glider wings.
No, has it been proven on an arrow?
This has, I don't know.
Okay.
But
that sounds like some shit Arnold would do, lifting, where he's like spinning and doing circles just to make other people do it look dumb.
But I actually looked it up. After he was talking about this turbulator, I'm like, what is this? So I looked it up online. I found out, I looked up turbulator tape, and all it was, I found tape that they actually put, it's like this zigzag tape they put on glider wings to reduce friction and increase control. And that's the foundation when they did this, was because once you start getting that smooth air, it does create more friction along the shaft and stuff. And so this just breaks it up a little bit. I haven't really noticed a difference.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some good shooters like Joel Turner.
You'll know when you've made it when people are putting that around their shaft.
That's one of those things. If it doesn't hurt and it has a chance to help, we tune the arrows without it and then put them on for a little, we decrease the size of fletching with broadheads until we start getting a barrel roll. And then we go back to the one we weren't getting a barrel roll and then put the tape on. Okay. So just to add, and it seems to probably reduce, I don't know. We haven't done any empirical testing. We're going to be doing a bunch of that stuff on video this coming year.
Okay.
We've been kind of under the radar just with the patent thing and all that stuff. But now we're trying to get the word out.
So tell me why somebody should spend this much money for a dozen arrows.
God, not everybody should. But, I mean, I love bow hunting.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of bad experiences in the beginning with pretty good shots, but just, a little bit forward, hit the front shoulder somewhere and crack. It doesn't go in.
Yep.
I'm like,
I've seen that. Anthony did that a couple times. I'm like, man, that just sucks.
And I was like, there's got to be a better way. My stuff is for pretty much a hardcore bow hunter, or a guy that's totally into it, or archery in general that shoots all the time. Yeah, or a nerd, techno guy. But if you shoot all the time like I do, I mean, you guys do the same thing. You're training, you're shooting, you're waiting for hunt. Everything's for bow hunting, and you've spent time in Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you go hunting, and we joke about it, but it's true. You hunt for 30 days, and on the 29th day, you finally get a shot.
Yeah.
And then you stick them in the front shoulder.
Yep.
Heartbroken. It's just heartbreaking.
And with this weight forward arrow with the Broadhead, which is fixed blade, by the way, you're getting incredible arrow flight accuracy out of a fixed blade, plus you're getting that penetration that'll blow through a blacktail shoulder.
Less oscillation in the arrow when it hits, so it'll be pass through easier.
It's funny. Well, there's so much
micro
involved.
diameter, and
there's so much involved with that. The weight forward does two things. One is, and this will explain why you get a lot of component failure on the heavier shafted ones, like the 10, 11, 12 grains per inch shafting.
Yep.
When you hit a hard resistance like heavy bone or a tree or whatever.
Yeah.
When you hit that with a 10, 11, 12 grain per inch arrow shaft, you have all of that energy
from the back of the arrow
behind that head in your little tiny aluminum insert. You have the whole weight of the arrow just pile driving the crap out of that thing.
Right.
And if that thing gets knocked off course by a bone or
it gets shoved through at an angle,
a little thing like an angle, then it's like a train wreck.
Right.
It's like a train derailing. It just shatters everything in its path and it's gone. As soon as your tip or front end bends, your penetration is toast.
Yeah.
So that's one of the nice things about using the lighter shafts. All the weight's up front. And the best shaft I ever tested was for a frontal impact was a super light. It was I don't even think they make it anymore. It was a Victory HV. Super light. It was a 5/16 diameter, thin wall, super stiff, super light. And the first time I shot it into the steel plate, that's the only one. I kept shooting it. It wouldn't break. Just kept bouncing off. I'm like, holy cow, this is it. The Holy Grail. We got it. So I shot it about 10 times into the steel plate.
Snapped in half first time on a side impact.
Turned it 45, and it looked like I stuck an M80 in that thing. Both ends just went kaboom, and I'm like, well, that's out. So I went from like elation to just, why would you?
If I was there, I could have told you not to try that.
Oh, dude, it was just, you probably already, it was awesome. Frontal impacts, zero.
Why?
Zero failure. There was nothing hitting. There was nothing hitting there.
So the on that shaft, that specific shaft, with the way carbon works, like we've seen carbon frames tested where they drive a truck over a carbon frame.
Yes.
Well, if you pull onto that carbon and you go really slow, and then it'll just kind of flex and bend because of how the carbon's wrapped, if it's lengthwise or whatever. Well, that carbon arrow is built to hit frontal impact. Well, when you go to the side, because the shaft wall is so thin, you can about fart and snap it in half.
And it's super high modulus, so it's brittle.
Just got a serious weak side.
Dude,
I mean, literally, that'll break them. I shot them.
Yeah.
You just flex like that, snaps
but you can shoot steel plates all day long head on.
Well, and it is false motivation and hope, because I've seen chuckleheads at the archery range. Look what mine can do. They're steel drums. And I'm like, hey, shoot it from the side. And it just literally, like you said, M80
explodes.
It was just, man, I couldn't believe it. But so I thought maybe I damaged the arrow.
Yeah.
I better go get another one.
No, say it ain't so.
I didn't know. That's one of the main things why when I built this, I'm like, all these guys out there listening right now, there's tons of guys doing this stuff, doing geeking what we're talking about, geeking out, doing the sleeves stuff. Guys are doing that. And so I tell guys all the time, like, dude, I've been there. I spent so much time and money testing this stuff on my own. I've willed it down to that.
Okay.
This center pin system with the micro diameter.
The one ring that will control
the
Middle Earth.
This is, well, we might get better shafting material down the road, but I cannot imagine a more lethal, better hunting arrow.
Delivery system.
A broadhead delivery system, period, at this time. I mean, we're going to probably end up getting better shafting down the road, but we're working on some stuff right now. But right now, it's money.
Cool.
But
I just noticed that Charlie has a shirt on that says, I blow Phelps.
Yes, he does. Phelps game calls.
Yeah. Yes, Phelps game calls.
Well, Brian, for everybody listening out there, that especially the geeky guys, but this is for the hardcore bow hunter. If a guy's going on a sheep hunt somewhere, wants to shoot the best stuff. My criteria for this was zero failure on impact with big game. I wanted as few parts as possible because I do most of my hunting in the backcountry. If there's a weak link in any of my equipment, it's almost instantly revealed. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. And most of our hunts, are. I've had a lot of once in a lifetime quote hunts.
Yeah.
That if something could go wrong, would go wrong.
Yeah.
And the more parts I seem to have, at one point I had 12 parts in one arrow. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster right there.
What's a dozen arrows with broadheads cost?
A dozen arrows are $300 a dozen. Shafts with sleeves are about a couple hundred.
Okay.
So.
And then if they want a set of broadheads plus practice heads,
center pin broadheads are $109 for a 3-pack. They come sharp out of the box, all spin tested, all shaving sharp. Yeah. Oh, one of the things about the sharp I wanted to mention too is our bevel's a 60-degree bevel.
What's that mean?
So that's the angle of the blade, the bevel of the blade, the knife blade on it. So most like single bevel broadheads are like 20 or 26% or 26%. So they're super thin. So they feel sharp to the touch. They're like a razor blade.
Yep.
When you feel these broadheads, this happened like one of the first guys I said something to. He's like, well, they weren't very sharp, so I sharpened them. And he didn't have a way to sharpen them. But so at 60-degree bevel, you can handle this broadhead. Mm-hmm. You can grab it and hold it. And, it's fine. You can run your finger this way. Don't go that way. But so it doesn't feel like sharp like a two-blade would.
Uh-huh.
Even a double bevel two-blade is 45 degrees. This is 60, so it's not as steep of an angle, so it doesn't feel as sharp.
So like a Havilon scalpel.
Yeah, the piranhas and stuff will be they're like you can shave with them, but these you could actually shave with.
No,
but they just feel different.
Yeah, so like with surgical scalpel, that angle is like 10 degrees or something. Yeah. I don't know what it is, 10 or 12. This one's like a hatchet. It's just a hatchet you can shave with.
It's a super sharp hatchet. Yeah, and that
I see. I get it now.
I figured that would be an easier way.
It's more like the roof
you
of
need
the
to
house.
work on that, by the way.
What's that?
It's explaining things.
It's like a hatchet.
It's like a hatchet.
So it's got a super sharp. So it's like it's a different angle.
It's a different angle. It's steeper and it's stronger.
Yeah.
I was just say it's stronger. Like a hatchet can take more abuse than a thin knife. It can take a lot more impact.
It will. And I don't know if you noticed, Aaron, but when this just looks like, I took a standard 3-blade and then just pulled the nose out. Mm-hmm. But in reality, when I designed the blades are actually thicker at the axis. So when they come out to the tip, the blades are actually almost twice as thick on the tip.
Are you an engineer by trade?
No. I just took that old school design and I maximized every facet of it.
So they're even thicker up front.
They're thicker up front on purpose.
That's a red line level of OCD.
Yeah, dude, that is because this tip is.
Well, you can tell by the blade. See the bevel thickness? How it gets thicker towards the tip? That's because it's whiter.
Yeah, that's smart.
So that's it, and that's there's nothing to catch on.
Shot animals with this?
Yeah, lots.
And
almost all pass-throughs. So in fact, this year I tested with a light arrow. I was pushing the limits of the heads.
Yeah.
And so I used a lighter bow than I've ever used. I actually used about a 50-pound longbow.
Yep.
With a 488 grain arrow on a Roosevelt bowl. A 5-point bowl. Broadside 14 yards. Pass through them. Just zip through them.
Yeah.
Arrow's perfect. All of a sudden it just goes, gone. Boop, gone. I'm like, that looked good, but what happened?
Yeah.
But then I watched him run over. Then he fell over there about 50 yards, and I was like, holy cow. It was crazy. So I figured I got all soft tissue.
Mm-hmm.
I was running broadhead. It looked very similar to that. Same profile as this. It was a 200 grain broadhead with steel sleeve.
Yeah.
So when we were taking care of them, breaking them down, pull the hide off, I checked the rib, shattered a rib going in, nicked a rib going out. My friend found my arrow sitting in berries about 20 yards behind the elk, just suspended there.
Nice.
And I was like, because I thought but it was bone shattering.
And this is with a lighter arrow.
This is light arrow. I wouldn't even think. Yeah. I mean, but I was like, in fact, when I knew I was getting the shot, I was like, God, I wish I had more horsepower. But then I honestly, I can remember thinking this stuff's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm pushing the limits. It's supposed to work. I shot. Well, I did my controlled shot process and pulled my psycho trigger and got him.
That's awesome.
But
That's cool.
It was
Well, yeah, so where do people go if they want to check it out?
Check it out at ValkyrieArchery.com.
Spell that?
ValkyRie. ValkyrieArchery.com, or on Instagram at Valkyrie.archery.
Okay.
And we're on Facebook too, Valkyrie Archery.
Okay.
So that's it.
All right, Brent. Brent,
the
thank you for
Valkyrie
coming
Jagger
on.
and the little ones are called
I know,
the Blood
dude. I
Eagles.
have a mental block there.
You guys, I should have brought you some food too.
I know. We're hungry.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I'm falling out. My neck hurts.
Dude,
I'm
I know.
hungry.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just
Dude.
it's an interesting product. So
You know what I'd like
We'll
to
have
do?
to test it out.
I want
for
to get
sure.
you guys some arrows, and then I'm probably going to come out this summer.
Yep.
Do one. I'd like you to shoot them, try them out, and then we'll do another one.
Follow up.
And talk about.
Yeah.
I'd
what
like
you
to wing
think.
some at 120, 130 and see what they do.
Dude, I
compared to
can
my
want
normal
guys to
animal.
shoot stuff that far, because if you want to shoot far, this is
I
it.
would never shoot an animal that far, but I'll shoot a
There's
target
guys that
that
do.
far.
There's guys that are shooting that far with
Aaron's.
light stuff, and it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But that's why I made this stuff, was so
Yeah.
you could still get all the
Oh,
benefits. of
I'm
everything.
super jacked about it.
The light stuff.
I'm like, I think it'd be cool. I like these Black Eagle micro diameter.
Dude,
That's
I've had tons of guys that have shot animals with these, and the first question I ask them is, "Oh, you know Neil Emick? He's out of
Aaron
Colorado."
might. I mean,
Anyway, he just shot a buck this year, and I just talked to him on the phone on the way here.
yeah.
He shot him at 50 yards. He's shooting an expedition bow at 65 pounds with a 300 grain broadhead with the X impacts. Shot him high, hit it, broke his spine, went through the center of his spine, and as he said, he found his arrow about 100 yards past him. And I'm
Wow.
like, dude, did
Crazy.
you get any pictures of that? He's like, he's gonna go find the bone. He left the bones, but I was like,
Wow.
I
That's-
haven't. I go, well, he videos
pretty incredible.
all the time. I'm like, do you video? And he's like,
That
no, it was
just
right at
comes
the end of
from
the
the
season.
broadhead and the weight forward and all that
yeah,
kind of
and
stuff.
and the broadhead doesn't get dull.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll split that bone, and the smooth sharp is the key
Yeah.
on this thing. So
Cool, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brent.
Brian. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
You got it right. All right.
Stay gritty.
The future of public lands. All of us own them, all of us use them. Political activists are demanding us to hand over the public lands where the state legislators could transfer and control these lands. U.S. citizens own 640 million acres of public lands, which creates 6.1 million jobs and generates $646 billion per year.
States have been selling off land to pay bills for over 100 years, thus closing access to the public. 39% of original 64 million acres have been sold. The cost of land management would break most state budgets. For instance, who will pay the hundreds of millions of dollars to fight major wildfires each year? It doesn't matter how many promises are made. The financial reality is it will force states to have to sell off our public land.
President Theodore Roosevelt said, "We must preserve our lands for future generations, not merely to the people now alive, but to the unborn people. Our duty to the whole bids us restrain an unprincipled present-day minority from wasting the heritage of these unborn generations."